In this section, we're going to talk about the structure of anxiety, and actually we're going to learn the mechanics of it. Because when we understand how something is put together and how it works, that gives us a really powerful platform to change it. If we think about a broad definition, anxiety is a range of either mental and or physical sensations that are very unpleasant, that have a significant impact on your quality of life. Some people will have mainly mental symptoms, some people have mainly physical symptoms, but anxiety is such a broad category, really everyone experiences it differently. There are some people, for example, who have specific events in their past that they know are having a big impact on them and it's creating anxiety. Whereas there are other people who have more of a general feeling of anxiety. Sometimes they don't even know why they're feeling anxious, but they know they're feeling anxious. And whereas other people will be doing relatively okay, and then anxiety will build very quickly, so it will happen very suddenly, and you may even be experiencing panic attacks or feeling you're on the verge of them. So there's such a wide scope of how people experience anxiety, but the fundamental parts of it are the same. Now, when we think about how it actually functions, anxiety is first of all an assumption. So it's an assumption that either something real, so something concrete, or something that you're imagining, either now or in the future, is going to cause you pain, distress, challenge, or difficulty relative to what you're going to get out of it. So I'll just recap that again so we can break it down. Anxiety is the assumption that something either real or imagined that's going to be happening either now or at some point in the future that's going to cause you more pain than it will pleasure. And anxiety needs each of these components in order to continue and in also to actually get worse, as it very often does over time. So we've got a broad range of symptoms. We've got these key components that anxiety needs in order to function, and we've got everyone having a different experience of it. So we can kind of see how anxiety can be a little bit of a puzzling experience. The thing that I found most challenging, and I know the thing that many of my clients find challenging, is that anxiety doesn't seem to respond to logic. So there are some instances where you know you're safe, you know you're okay, there's no apparent reason to be feeling anxious, but nonetheless, these feelings of anxiety are bubbling and increasing, and you're just really feeling more and more distressed. Now, you can say to yourself, with all of the logic in the world, there's no reason to feel anxious, I'm perfectly safe, there's nothing going on here, I'm not a threat, and that may dampen it a little bit, but very, very rarely will logic solve anxiety. So that makes it a lot more difficult to deal with, and it makes it really quite challenging for some people. Now, this next part in terms of the timeline is hopefully going to put some of that into perspective for you. Now, if we were to think about this as being your timeline, okay, so we've got your past here, we've got present moment here, and we've got the future here. Okay, so we've got past, present, future. Now, anytime you experience an incident or an event that you perceive to be painful, negative, or traumatic, that moment is bookmarked by your mind. So your mind almost gives it a tag, it gives it a bookmark, and it gives it a higher level of importance because at some level you perceived it threatened you. Now, this may be a threat to your survival, it may be a threat to your community, it can be any different type of threat, but your mind registers that as being very important and it bookmarks it and tags it. Then what happens is for any event or incident that has not been neutralized, so if it's not been cleared, it's not been processed, your mind is on the alert for anything like that happening again. So what happens is your mind projects that bookmark event and it projects it forwards in time into your future, applying it to lots of different scenarios. And a lot of the time, you may feel like it's helping you be more prepared, But actually what it's doing is it's projecting those past events forward and creating all the same anxiety as what happened at that original event. So effectively what happens is, until it's neutralized, the mind keeps projecting it forwards, and any time that your mind can link what happened then to anything that's happening in your surroundings or in your future, it triggers off those same feelings of anxiety. And this is actually a form of feedback to help bring your attention to some work that needs doing or some thinking that needs to be reevaluated and some meanings to be changed. What very often happens is that these bookmark events, so as they continue and rumble on in time, they undergo a process called generalizations. And this means your mind starts to link smaller and smaller components of that initial event, and it links it to other different contexts. So what happens is the initial trigger, which may be from one event, then starts to generalize to different contexts, which then all of a sudden means you've got many more triggers to feeling anxious, but they might not make a really clear link back to that original event. As a result, you may have a range of different triggers that cause you to feel anxious, but some of them you might not understand why, or you might understand, like, how has that happened? Why am I feeling like this? And it's because of these compound associations. So you may find the longer that you've experienced anxiety, the more of these triggers that you have, because your mind has generalized the process, which makes it more difficult to deal with. But there is a very clear strategy to actually unravel that and actually clear the original events, so then the whole timeline clears. And what we're looking for is to clear those past events, which then means there's no projection forwards in time, which then means you can be present and you can be conscious in the moment. And when you're in the moment, anxiety just cannot be there. So when we think about, it's a broad range of symptoms, it happens to different people in different ways. It's an assumption based on real or imagined, either now or in the future, and it's creating more pain than pleasure, and it's based on your timeline. That gives us the fundamentals of how anxiety is created and how it continues and evolves over time. So when we understand this, we can then make very targeted interventions at the main pieces that are causing the problem to actually get a really big impact in a short space of time. And that's what we'll be covering in these upcoming videos.